presents a cognitive landscape that completely defies that expectation.
It really does. It's so strange.
We have our hands on an unedited, archival transcript of Bobby Fischer, arguably the most notorious chess prodigy in history.
Easily.
And he's sitting down for an interview on the Dick Cavett show. And what is chilling about reading Fischer's words isn't just the sheer computing power of his brain. It is the absolute eerie silence of his internal world.
And that is the crucial distinction to make as we analyze this transcript today.
We have this cultural expectation, like the beautiful mind trope, right? That brilliant minds are inherently loud.
Right, like chaotic and plagued by floating equations.
Exactly, or just an uncontrollable influx of data. But Fischer completely shatters that.
He does.
He discusses feats of calculation that would literally hospitalize an average person with the casual detachment of someone explaining, I don't know, how to tie a shoe.
Yeah, it's wild.
It reveals a fundamentally different baseline for cognitive load. What's fascinating here is how casually he dismisses feats that seem superhuman to the rest of us.
Absolutely. And I want to look closely at the transcript itself because it's just this fascinating artifact for you to read. It's a raw snapshot in time.
Very raw.
Fischer is American chess royalty here, and he's on the brink of this massive, globally watched gauntlet. He's about to play the Russians.
The big matches.
Right. And looking at the raw type text, whoever transcribed this for the network clearly wasn't a chess aficionado.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, because they mangled a few of the names. They wrote Petroian instead of Petrosian.
Right.
They wrote Spasi instead of Spassky. And Kareem, which was likely a phonetic fumble for one of the other elite grandmasters of that era.
Probably.
But, typos aside, reading this is like finding the diary of an elite hacker. It's a raw, unfiltered look at someone who literally sees the matrix of a 64-square board.
That's a great analogy.
He's outlining his path to the World Championship. And you'd expect a guy preparing for a mental world war against the Soviet machine to be obsessively, neurotically consumed by his studies.
Right, just buried in books.
Yeah. Yet, when we look at his background and his mental state away from the board, it is entirely counterintuitive.
It really forces us to redefine what preparation and intelligence actually look like. Take his education, for example. He openly admits to Cavett that he was an oh-so-so student.
Which is crazy for a certified genius.
Right. He flunked subjects in grade school. He adds that he eventually made them up and passed with, quote, flying colors. But he completely rejected the traditional academic path.
Yeah, he dropped out of high school.
After just 2.5 years.
Wait, I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Because I am a parent of 2 kids.
Okay, yeah.
And I watch how the modern education system works. How it tries to force every single brain into the exact same standardized mold.
Oh, for sure. It's very rigid.
Right. It rewards a very specific type of broad, generalized retention. So if Fischer is arguably one of the greatest analytical minds of the 20th century, why couldn't he apply that raw processing power to basic high school subjects?
Wow.
I mean, is it just a matter of rebellion, or is his brain actually incapable of learning that way?
It's actually a profound question of neural resource allocation.
Okay, unpack that.
So the traditional education system is built on what we call horizontal learning.
Right.
Acquiring a baseline of knowledge across a wide variety of subjects. Math, literature, history, biology.
A little bit of everything.
Exactly. But Fischer's brain operates on vertical integration. He is hyper-optimized for one specific type of logical, spatial problem solving. When Cavett asks him about his math skills, you would naturally assume a chess grandmaster is a mathematical savant.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be doing calculus in his head.
Right. But Fischer bluntly states he never tried to develop himself in those things.
He says he reads magazines.
Yeah, he reads magazines, he actively avoids heavy books. He simply refuses to allocate neural bandwidth to anything outside of his chosen vertical.
That's fascinating.
His brain actively rejects irrelevant data to preserve processing power for the chessboard.
That makes perfect sense, but I mean, it still sounds incredibly exhausting to live with a brain that is that hyper-focused.
You'd think so, yeah.
Because again, as a parent, I see my kids play a new video game for 3 hours, and that night, they are tossing and turning.
Oh, the Tetris effect.
Yes. They're dreaming about falling blocks or moving characters. Their brains are trying to process the visual inputs long after the screen is off.
Right.
So when Cavett asks Fischer if he ever has to clear his head, or if he dreams about chess moves, I fully expected Fischer to describe this like tortured, sleepless existence.
Like Beth Harmon in The Queen's Gambit looking at the ceiling.
Exactly, floating chess pieces on the ceiling. But he says no. He says, my head's always pretty clear. No dreams. How is that neurologically possible?
It comes down to cognitive closure.
Oh.
When your kids dream about a video game, their brain is experiencing that Tetris effect you mentioned. The subconscious is struggling to assimilate new, incomplete patterns.
Because they haven't mastered it yet.
Exactly, but Fischer doesn't have incomplete patterns.
Oh.
For him, the chessboard isn't an unresolved problem. It is a perfectly organized filing cabinet.
That is a great way to put it.
When he's playing, the cabinet is open.
Yeah.
When he steps away, he has the supreme executive function to simply close the drawer. He doesn't bleed mental energy because there is no unresolved cognitive dissonance regarding the game. He's like a master carpenter. They don't dream of hammers, you know. The board is just a tool, not a haunting.
I like that. But I am not entirely sure I buy that it's just supreme executive function.
No.
Is it possible he just lacks the imagination for anything else?
Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate here.
Please do.
If his brain is a perfectly organized filing cabinet, why does he completely dismiss other games of calculation?
I see where you're going.
Right. Cavett asks him about American checkers, and Fischer basically just laughs it off. He says he knows how to play, but he's no good.
Right. He admits he's bad at it.
But checkers is a 64-square board. It requires foresight. It requires calculation. If he is this spatial genius, why on earth is he bad at checkers?
Well, because checkers, despite looking superficially similar, relies on an entirely different set of heuristics.
Really, even though it's the same board?
Yes. The movement mechanics are different. The geometry of control is completely different. Fischer hasn't built the neural pathways for checkers.
So it's not a transferable skill.
Not directly, no. To become good at it, he would have to consciously expend energy to build a new filing cabinet, and he fundamentally refuses to do that.
Because it's outside his vertical.
Exactly. But look at what happens immediately after in the transcript. Cavett brings up slapjack.
Oh my gosh, yes. The children's card game where you flip cards and slap the pile when a jack appears?
Right. And Fischer immediately lights up.
He says, oh yeah, I'm pretty fast at that too. I'll stand you to that sometime.
It is such a bizarre pivot, isn't it?
It's wild. He rejects a highly strategic board game, but is eagerly challenging a talk show host to slapjack.
But look at the underlying mechanics of slapjack.
What are they?
It requires zero foresight, zero deep calculation. It is a game of pure, immediate visual pattern recognition and fast-twitch physical reflex.
Oh, I see.
By playing slapjack, Fischer can experience the thrill of competition and utilize his incredibly fast processing speed without having to open the chess filing cabinet.
Wow.
It is a completely different neural pathway. It allows him to compete without draining his strategic reserves.
Okay, that is fascinating. It's almost like a professional weightlifter refusing to help you move a couch because it might tweak a specific stabilizing muscle they need for a competition.
Right,
But
exactly.
they will happily go play a game of ping pong.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's hyper-specific muscle preservation, but for the brain.
Yes.
So this hyper-specific compartmentalization naturally leads to the biggest mystery of elite chess. When he actually does sit down at the board, when he opens that cabinet, how far into the future can he actually see?
The golden question.
Right. So we discussed chess strategy, and Cavett asked the question everyone wants to know. How many moves in advance can you see?
And Fischer's answer provides a true masterclass in understanding the mathematical reality of chess.
He's so nonchalant about it.
Very. He doesn't give a bombastic, exaggerated number. He tells Cavett that it depends entirely on the position.
Mm-hmm.
If there are a lot of what he calls sub-variations, he might only look 1 or 2 moves ahead.
Just 1 or 2.
Right. But in what he terms a forced line, he casually states he might see 10 to 20 moves in advance.
See, as someone who investigates facts for a living, a claim of predicting human behavior 20 steps into the future sets off every alarm bell I have.
I'm sure it does.
I need you to unpack the exact difference between a subvariation and a forced line for us.
Mm-hmm.
Why does one limit his vision to 2 moves while the other grants him 20?
It is entirely about the exponential explosion of a decision tree.
Okay, explain that.
So a subvariation occurs in a balanced open position. Let's say you make a move. Your opponent has, let's say, 5 perfectly logical legal responses.
Okay.
For each of those 5 responses, you have 5 counter responses. Within just 2 complete turns, you are looking at hundreds of potential board states.
It multiplies incredibly fast.
By turn 3, it's thousands. Even the greatest human mind cannot reliably hold thousands of branching realities in working memory.
Because the math becomes chaotic noise.
Exactly. So in those positions, Fischer relies on foundational principles, controlling the center, piece development, things like that, and he only calculates one or two precise moves down the most likely paths.
Oh, I love this. So to use an analogy, it's like a standard chess turn is standing at the entrance of a hedge maze.
Yes.
You take one step in and you immediately face 3 branching paths. You can only physically peer down one path at a time.
Right.
You cannot possibly predict where you will be 10 steps from now because you don't know which of the dozens of branching decisions you or your opponent will actually make.
Exactly. But a forced line removes the maze entirely.
How so?
A forced line means you have made a move that places your opponent under such extreme immediate duress, such as placing their king in check or threatening to capture their queen, that they only have one legal or one strictly logical response to survive.
Ah, so you are pushing them down a straight hallway with no side doors.
Precisely. You have stripped them of their agency.
Wow.
They aren't making choices anymore. They are just reacting to your dictates.
That is terrifying.
If Fischer can visualize a sequence where every single move he makes forces his opponent to make one specific response, the decision tree doesn't branch.
It just remains a single straight line.
Right. And down that straight forced line, Fischer's brain can calculate 20 moves into the future.
But, I mean, even just visualizing a straight hallway for 20 steps on a chessboard is a staggering cognitive feat.
Oh, absolutely.
You aren't just seeing a straight line. You are having to dynamically update the geometric reality of the board in your mind's eye 20 consecutive times.
Yes.
You have to remember where every piece is moved to, what squares are now empty, what new diagonals have opened up, all without physically touching the board. It is literally running a perfect simulation of physics and geometry in a void.
It requires immense, almost terrifying calculating power.
And we discuss game complexity when they talk about this, because the ultimate distillation of this force line calculation comes up later in the transcript.
All right, when they discuss the concept of a two-move mate.
Yes, Kvet asks about this specific trap. And for you listening, a two-move mate means from the very first move of the game, a sequence is initiated that mathematically guarantees a checkmate on the second move.
It's the fastest possible way to lose.
Exactly. And Kvet asks if there's only one mathematical possibility of how that can happen. And Fischer notes there are technically 2 variations, but they're functionally identical.
Right, and think about the psychological implications of that. When Fischer is discussing a force line of 20 moves or a mathematically solved two-move mate, he is revealing exactly how he views his opponents.
How's that?
In these scenarios, he is no longer playing a game against a human being. The opponent's psychology, their style, their emotions, none of it matters.
Right, they're just a cog in his machine.
Yeah. He has reduced the human sitting across from him to a variable trapped within an inescapable mathematical formula.
That is deeply unsettling. It strips the humanity entirely out of the competition.
It does.
But seeing 20 moves ahead in a localized one-on-one match is one thing. You are focusing all of your bandwidth down one hallway. What completely breaks my understanding of cognitive limits is how this exact same brain handles the chaos of playing multiple people simultaneously.
Oh, the simultaneous exhibition.
Right, because we discuss blindfold chess and simultaneous matches here. Kvet brings up these famous exhibitions where Fischer plays 20 people at once. He walks from board to board, makes a move, and moves on, ultimately crushing an entire room of players.
And Fischer's response to this is baffling.
Baffling. He calls it a show, a stunt, and literally says, it's nothing.
It's nothing.
How can managing 20 independent decision trees simultaneously be nothing?
Because of the specific cognitive mechanism he employs to do it.
Okay, what is he doing?
Well, Kvet asks him the exact right question here. He asks, do you carry all of those boards in your head, or do you just remember the position when you walk back up to it?
Right.
And Fischer provides a chillingly clinical answer. He says, you have it in your subconscious as you leave the board, and you work on it a little bit, and when you come back, you sort of have the move.
Wait, I refuse to let that slide.
I knew you would.
The subconscious doesn't play chess. The subconscious regulates heart rate, it processes deep-seated emotional trauma, it makes you flinch when something flies at your face.
True.
How can a subconscious mind calculate the geometric complexities of a grandmaster-level chess move while he's physically walking across a room.
Okay, so we have to translate his use of the word subconscious into modern neuroscience.
Please do.
He is describing elite pattern recognition and heuristic processing.
Okay.
When you or I look at a chessboard, we see 32 individual pieces on 64 individual squares. We have to actively, consciously calculate how a knight moves.
Right. I'm literally tracing the L shape with my finger.
Exactly. Fischer doesn't see individual pieces. He sees chunks of information. He sees entire structural patterns that he has encountered thousands of times before.
Like reading a word instead of sounding out the individual letter.
That is a perfect analogy, yes. When he looks at board number 7, his brain takes a high-resolution snapshot of the pattern. As he walks to board number 8, his conscious mind engages with board 8, but his background processing, what he calls the subconscious, is running the pattern from board 7 against a mental database of millions of historic games.
Wow.
It is cross-referencing the geometry. By the time he walks back to board 7, his background processing has already pulled the correct solution from the database and hands it to his conscious mind.
That is unbelievable.
He isn't actively calculating 20 games. He is managing a highly efficient automated retrieval system. That is why it is a stunt to him. The physical board acts as his external hard drive.
But this is where the transcript circles back to that terrifying story we started with.
The blindfold record.
Because Fischer establishes a hard boundary here. Playing 20 people while he can look at the physical boards is a stunt.
Right.
But playing multiple people blindfolded, that, he admits, is really hard.
Really hard for Bobby Fischer is saying something.
Seriously. He cites that record of the man playing roughly 40 players blindfolded. And this is where my journalist brain gets hooked, because I want to know the why. If holding the pattern in his subconscious is so effortless, why does taking away the physical board cause a man's nervous system to collapse for 2 months? Like we talked about at the beginning.
Because without the physical board, the brain is forced to be both the processor and the hard drive. You lose the ability to dump the information out of your short-term memory.
Right.
In a normal simultaneous exhibition, Fischer looks at a board, makes a move, and then clears his active memory to look at the next board. The wooden pieces hold the memory for him until he returns.
They literally store the data.
Exactly. But in a blindfold match against 40 people, you can never clear your active memory. You must perpetually sustain 40 distinct, highly complex spatial maps in the forefront of your consciousness.
So if opponent number 18 moves a pawn, you have to mentally retrieve board 18, update the position of that specific pawn, calculate your response, lock the new geometric map back into place, and then immediately pull up board 19.
Yes.
And if you drop a single thread, if you forget where the bishop is on board 12, the entire house of cards comes down.
Precisely. And the biological cost of preventing that house of cards from falling is astronomical.
I can't even imagine.
The brain is not designed to hold that much dynamic data in active working memory without visual reinforcement. It requires a sustained spike in adrenaline and cortisol to maintain that level of hypervigilance.
You are quite literally redlining the human nervous system.
You are. The prefrontal cortex is burning through glucose at an unsustainable rate. When that record holder collapsed for 2 months, it wasn't just mental fatigue, it was systemic biological exhaustion.
There's a detail in the transcript here that completely threw me, though.
Which one?
Kevet asks if this record holder has to keep the blindfold on to play well, almost implying that the blindfold is some sort of savant-like crutch.
Ah, yes.
And Fischer casually notes, no, he plays a good game both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I found that incredibly profound. Like, can blindfold players also play well when they can see the board? Yes.
It is profound because it proves that extreme blindfold chess is not a parlor trick or a sensory deprivation gimmick.
Right.
It is the ultimate manifestation of pure spatial mastery. The fact that the player is equally dominant with or without the blindfold proves that they aren't relying on visual cues at all.
They don't need their eyes.
Exactly. The underlying geometry of the game is so deeply woven into their neural architecture that physical pieces and a wooden board are completely redundant. They are playing the pure math of the game.
Now, if you possess an intellect that operates on that level, if you can reduce human beings to mathematical variables, if you can process 20 games subconsciously, if you understand spatial reality so deeply you don't even need your eyes,
it changes you.
that level of power doesn't just stay on the chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
It fundamentally alters your psychology. It shapes your ego.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to Fischer's worldview, which is arguably as intense and uncompromising as his gameplay.
You really cannot separate the mind that plays the game from the ego that drives the man.
No, you can't.
When you operate on a cognitive plane that far removed from the rest of humanity, it breeds a very specific, almost weaponized form of arrogance.
And Fischer does not shy away from it for a second.
Not at all.
Cavett brings up Muhammad Ali, who was still Cassius Clay at the time, because Ali was famous for his poetic, uncompromising arrogance.
Right. I am the greatest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Cavett jokingly asks if Fischer is related to him, given Fischer's own massive confidence. And Fischer's response is stunning.
It really is.
He doesn't just agree. He claims ownership of the archetype. He says, I was around before Clay. I don't know, maybe he picked it up for me. I was U.S. champion before anybody heard of Clay.
It is an incredible statement. He is legitimately suggesting that Muhammad Ali, one of the most iconic, charismatic figures in global history, stole his bravado from a chess player.
Now, as a journalist, my first instinct is to fact-check that timeline.
Of course.
And strictly speaking, Fischer actually has a point.
Really?
Yeah, Fischer became the youngest ever U.S. chess champion in 1957 at the age of 14. Muhammad Ali didn't win his Olympic gold medal until 1960.
Oh, wow.
So Fischer actually was in the national spotlight first.
That's wild.
But to claim that Ali modeled his persona after him is pure, unadulterated narcissism.
Completely.
Yet, in Fischer's mind, it makes perfect logical sense. He dominated his field completely. So naturally, he assumes anyone else dominating their field must be taking notes from him.
And he was reaping the economic rewards of that dominance, which fueled the ego further.
That's prize money.
He casually mentions winning $5,000 something in a recent tournament in Yugoslavia. Now, Cavett, reflecting the intense geopolitical anxieties of the Cold War era, seems genuinely surprised.
He asks if you can actually take American dollars out of a communist country like Yugoslavia.
And Fischer brushes the question off like a seasoned diplomat or like an international smuggler, just saying, oh yeah, you can take dollars out of Yugoslavia, oh sure.
He doesn't care about the Iron Curtain or the complexities of Cold War economics. He only cares about the prize pool.
Exactly. But this leads to a fascinating sociological observation Fischer makes.
Okay, let's hear it.
Cavett points out that chess doesn't sweep the United States with the same fervor that it does in communist countries. And Fischer offers this blunt theory. He states that the U.S. has too many things. All these entertainments, movies, just too many things people can do. In contrast, he claims communist countries don't have that many entertainments.
Now, it is vital that we analyze this impartially for you all listening.
Yes, absolutely.
We are not endorsing Fischer's geopolitical worldview or his socioeconomic theories about the Soviet bloc.
Right, we're just looking at his perspective.
Exactly. But what is deeply illuminating here is how Fischer uses chess as the solitary lens through which he understands global societies.
Well, that's the key point.
He isn't analyzing the complex state-sponsored sports programs of the Soviet Union or their use of intellectual dominance as political propaganda. He reduces a massive geopolitical conflict down to a simple equation of distraction.
Exactly. To him, chess requires absolute dedication and a vacuum of distraction. He looks at American culture and sees a saturated market of easy dopamine, movies, television, sports.
Yeah.
He looks at communist nations and perceives a lack of those specific distractions, which he believes naturally funnels their intellect toward the chessboard.
It is a wildly reductive theory,
Very much so.
but it perfectly highlights how his brain categorizes the world.
And despite his complaints about American distractions, Fischer was actively dismantling the products of that focused Soviet machine.
Oh, he was carrying them apart.
Cavett brings up Fischer's legendary historic match sweeps, where he beat elite world-class grandmasters with a score of 6-0.
6-0.
We are talking about shutting out some of the greatest minds on the planet.
Right. And Cavett struggles to even articulate the horror of that experience for the opponents. He asks Fischer, what exactly happens to these guys? Does he trap them in a position they physically cannot escape from? Or do they just lack the computer mind to see the hidden exit?
And Fischer's answer provides one of the darkest psychological insights into elite competition I have ever heard.
It's brutal.
He explains that these grandmasters rarely get checkmated. They resign, they give up while they still have pieces on the board.
Fischer says, well, they could play on, say, 20 moves, but why waste time? He explains that they look at the board and he just knows something went wrong somewhere.
Why waste time? Imagine the psychological devastation of that moment. You are a Soviet grandmaster. You have dedicated your entire life to this game. You are sitting across from this American prodigy. Your king is not currently under attack.
You're ostensibly safe.
Right. You have lethal moves you can make. But you stare at the geometry of the board, and the horrifying realization washes over you that you are trapped in a 20-move forced line.
Oh, man.
You realize that 10 moves ago you made an imperceptible error, and Fischer saw the mathematical conclusion that you missed.
You are essentially a ghost haunting your own game.
That's exactly it. The trap is already sprung. The execution just hasn't happened yet.
So you extend your hand,
Yep.
resign, and save yourself the humiliation of playing out the final 20 moves of your own funeral.
It is the ultimate assertion of intellectual dominance. You are not just beating them. You are forcing them to acknowledge that your mind operates on a level they cannot even perceive until it is too late.
Wow.
To truly grasp how a trap like that functions, how a grandmaster can be suffocated so completely that they surrender, we have to look at the board the exact way Fischer does.
And fortunately, in this interview, Fischer demonstrates this mechanism on live television using a historical masterpiece.
Yes, he does.
So we discuss Bobby Fischer, the teacher here. This segment of the transcript is incredible because Fischer actually steps into the role of a professor. Cavett has a physical board set up, and Fischer reconstructs a famous 19th century game. He calls it Morphy against the Duke of Brunswick.
The famous opera game.
Exactly. And Paul Morphy is a figure Fischer refers to with deep reverence as one of the old-time greats. Now, what Fischer demonstrates here is a forced mate in 2 moves, but he doesn't just show the final moves, he illustrates the concept of positional pressure.
Right. He explains how the pieces exert control over the board.
And notice what he doesn't do. He doesn't patronize the audience by explaining the basic rules of how a knight hops or a bishop slides.
No, he speaks in terms of geometry and force fields.
Right.
He shows how a bishop holding a long diagonal line isn't just a piece sitting on a square, it is an invisible wall cutting the board in half. He shows how a pawn can act as a barricade, structurally denying the enemy king an escape route. He is teaching the audience to see the board not as wooden pieces, but as a dynamic map of controlled tension.
It is brilliant. The climax of this game is a perfect illustration of that tension. Morphy is closing in on the Duke's king, and Morphy does something that violates every instinct of self-preservation.
He sacrifices his queen.
He sacrifices his queen, the most powerful piece on the board. He drives his queen directly into the Duke's defenses. The Duke has absolutely no choice but to capture it with his knight. It is a forced move.
But the moment the Duke's knight captures the queen, the structural integrity of his entire defense collapses.
Because it was a trap.
The queen was merely a decoy. By forcing the knight to move, Morphy cleared the exact path he needed. With the knight displaced, Morphy's rook slides straight down the newly opened file, and it is immediate checkmate.
When I analyze this sequence, I think of a perfectly orchestrated heist movie.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like every piece is a highly specialized operative. The bishop is the sniper locking down the perimeter. The pawn is the muscle blocking the exit. The queen is the distraction throwing herself into the spotlight to pull the security guards out of position.
Right.
And because every single operative executes their precise role flawlessly, the rook can just walk straight through the front door and secure the vault. It is a masterclass in coordinated geometry.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Thanks.
Cavett is totally mesmerized watching Fischer handle the pieces, comparing him to a musician handling his instrument. But watching Fischer flawlessly recreate a game from 1858 from pure memory prompts Cavett to ask a brilliant, seemingly absurd hypothetical question about memory retention.
Yes, I love this part. Cavett asks, has there ever been an earthquake during a match and the pieces fell off and no one could remember how they had been?
It's such a strange, specific scenario.
And Fischer's response is instantaneous. He laughs, mentions a few times the lights have gone out, but regarding the earthquake, he casually says, oh yeah, I know where everything was.
He doesn't even pause to consider the difficulty of the task.
Now, I want to push back on this because it sounds like a parlor trick. Photographic memory is largely considered a myth by modern psychologists. Most people who claim to have it are just using mnemonic devices. Is Fischer actually taking a perfect photograph of the board in his mind?
No, it is not photographic memory in the way pop culture defines it.
Okay, explain.
If you took a chessboard and scattered pieces randomly, illegally, across the squares and showed it to Fischer for 5 seconds, he would struggle to remember it just like anyone else. Yes, but an active, legally played game is not random. It is a logical narrative.
Oh, I see.
When the hypothetical earthquake hits, Fischer isn't trying to remember the physical shape of a wooden horse on a black square. He is remembering the underlying logical truth of the position. He knows the knight is on f3 because it is applying pressure to d4, which is currently occupied by a pawn that moved there 3 turns ago to block a bishop.
Oh, wow.
He remembers the purpose of the pieces. The physical board is just a visual manifestation of a mathematical reality he is holding in his mind.
So if the board vanishes, the math still exists.
Exactly.
That is staggering.
Okay.
Now, hearing about 19th century European dukes, mathematical traps, and perfect recall makes the highest levels of chess sound incredibly elitist.
It really does.
It sounds like a walled garden that a normal human being could never penetrate. But when Cavett pivots to the history of the game and how accessible it is, Fischer's responses are remarkably grounded and deeply pragmatic.
They are. We discuss tournament history here, and he provides a brief history, noting that while the fundamental origins of the game stretch back thousands of years to places like India, the specific modernized rules we play by today are only about a century old.
Which prompts Cavett to ask if Fischer ever tries to hunt down rare, ancient books on chess. You would assume a genius obsessed with his craft would romanticize the ancient texts and seek out forgotten wisdom. But Fischer completely rejects the premise.
He does.
He says, these old books, they didn't know that much way back then.
This encapsulates Fischer's entire philosophy. He is a pure empiricist.
Right.
He respects historical figures like Paul Morphy because Morphy's logic remains mathematically sound today. But Fischer has zero tolerance for romanticizing history, just for the sake of antiquity.
Yeah, he doesn't care about aesthetics.
Exactly. Chess is an evolving science of pure logic. Modern theory is built upon the analyzed data of millions of games over the last 100 years. The ancients simply did not possess the computing power or the data sets that modern players do. To Fischer, nostalgia is a weakness. He relies entirely on modern, optimized theory.
He is brutally objective. But then Cavett asks a question that I think speaks for every person in the audience.
The accessibility question.
Right. He asks, how long would it take the average person, or even myself, to learn to last a few moves with you? Maybe 5 or 6 moves, starting from 0.
And Fischer's answer is that learning the basic moves takes about 20 minutes.
Okay, that makes sense.
And to survive 5 or 6 moves against him, he claims a couple hours, not a big deal.
To a layman, that sounds incredibly encouraging.
Yeah.
Just 2 hours of study, and you can step into the ring with Bobby Fischer and survive.
Right.
See, I call absolute nonsense on that.
You don't buy it.
Not at all. As a journalist, when someone gives me a timeline that sounds too good to be true, it usually is.
Yeah.
2 hours of study to survive against the greatest player in the world. 5 or 6 moves in a chess game takes roughly 2 minutes to play out.
Okay.
Are you telling me 2 hours of reading a book prepares a novice to engage with a mind that sees 20 moves into the future? What is the catch?
The catch is the exponential complexity we discussed earlier. Fischer isn't offering a compliment. He is precisely defining the boundary of a novice's survival.
Okay, walk me through that.
Yeah. When you start a game, there are standard, universally accepted opening moves. If you study for 2 hours, you can memorize those basic principles.
Right.
You can learn not to move your king out into the open. You can learn to avoid the 2-move mate trap. You can essentially memorize a script for 5 or 6 moves that keeps you mathematically safe.
But what happens on move 7?
On move 7, the script ends.
No.
By move 7, the board has transitioned from a standard opening into a complex middle game. The sub-variations have multiplied into the thousands.
And your 2 hours are up.
Your 2 hours of memorized patterns are utterly exhausted. You are no longer reciting a safe script. You are now required to actively calculate strategy in Fischer's domain.
Which is a death sentence.
And the very second you step off the memorized path, his mind will spot the whipness, force you down a hallway, and crush you. Surviving 5 moves isn't playing against Fischer. It is just delaying the inevitable execution.
It is a terrifying realization of just how deep the water gets once you leave the shallow end.
Very deep.
But as intimidating as that is, I found the conclusion of their conversation surprisingly unifying.
Oh, about the women in chess.
Yes, they touch on the role of women in chess. Historically, the upper echelons of chess have been intensely male-dominated. But when Cavett asks if there are any elite female players, Fischer doesn't hesitate.
Not at all. He immediately acknowledges history by naming Vera Menchik.
Mm-hmm.
He identifies her as a Hungarian player and unequivocally states she was the best woman player in the world historically.
And he brings it to the modern era as well. He mentions a current Russian player. It's transcribed here as Pashili, though likely referring to a dominant Soviet master of the era like Nona Gaprindashvili.
Right, another transcription error.
Regardless of the typo, Fischer categorizes her as being real good and explicitly states she is of master strength.
What is illuminating here is that Fischer's immense ego is ultimately subservient to the mathematics of the board.
That's a great point.
He may be arrogant, but his respect is entirely meritocratic. The chessboard is the ultimate equalizer.
It really is.
It does not care about your nationality, it does not care about your politics, and it does not care about your gender. If you can navigate the geometry, if you can calculate the forced lines, and if you possess master strength, Fischer respects you. He views chess as a universal language of logic.
It is a universal language, but one spoken fluently by very few.
Very few indeed.
And as we synthesize everything we have unpacked today for you all, we are left staring at a deeply complex portrait. We have explored a mind that operates without the noise and dreams that plague the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
A brain that can peer down a straight hallway and dictate human behavior 20-eyed, moves into the future. A man who considers processing 20 separate games subconsciously as nothing more than a parlor trick.
He is an individual who can flawlessly recall the precise positional geometry of a 19th century masterclass sacrifice from pure memory,
Right.
treating the physical chessboard as a mere projection of his own internal calculations. He dominates his opponents not just by taking their pieces, but by crushing their psychological will to continue.
Forcing them to resign before the trap even fully closes.
Exactly.
He turns the machine on, he dismantles his opponent, and then he simply closes the filing cabinet. It is a level of cognitive control that is almost beyond comprehension.